What the wife buys also becomes the husband's. If that's not acceptable, then let's divorce.
My husband, Charles, tries to take things from me for unreasonable reasons. He even tries to give things I bought for my parents to my in-laws to make himself look good. But that's just... When I tell him the truth, he turned pale. Before I married Charles, my grandparents left me a gift. It was real estate. When I thanked my grandparents and told them that I was going to use it to help me and my husband in the future, they both frowned and advised me to keep it a secret. Even if Charles was my own husband, they told me to keep it a secret that I had a passive income and that I had enough to live on. I felt somewhat sorry for Charles, but I decided to follow my grandparents' advice. My grandfather, who cared for me, passed away, and as I continued my married life with Charles, an incident occurred. One day, when I checked the account where I saved my living expenses, I noticed that $10,000 had been withdrawn from it. This account was mainly managed by me and was created to make ends meet for the living expenses that Charles brings into the house. It's such a large sum of money, but I had no memories of withdrawing it. This meant that the one who withdrew that amount was inevitably Charles. I immediately asked Charles about it when he came home that day. "Hey, $10,000 are missing from our living expenses account. Do you have any idea about what happened to the missing money?"
Yeah, I lent it to my mom. She was in some kind of trouble.
He answered easily, and it was confirmed that Charles had lent it to my mother-in-law, Lisa. "And you didn't tell me anything about it?"
It's okay. Besides, it's my money that I earned. We have some savings, so it's okay. That amount won't hurt.
If Lisa was in trouble, well, you can't do anything but to help, but a word or two to me would have been nice. The account is for both of us, after all. If it was his own account that he had set up when he was single, it would have been fine. But to withdraw a large sum of money from our shared account without saying anything was a bit too much. When I sighed heavily at Charles's selfishness, he frowned and gave me a look that looked very irritated.
Okay. I'll tell you next time.
Charles dismisses it in a way that he was annoyed by it and quickly went to the bathroom. I didn't feel good at all at what had happened. He didn't behave like that when we were first married, and he used to listen to me sincerely. Is this what changing is like in a married relationship? A few days later, I had no choice but to go to my parents-in-law's house to hand over a package that had been sent to our house by mistake.
"Oh, Megan, thanks for coming all the way here."
Why don't you come in since you came all the way?
I had intended to leave them at the entrance, but I couldn't really refuse my parents-in-law, so I went to their living room to have a cup of tea. As I did so, I noticed a variety of things. Luxurious cosmetic products, glamorous clothes, health products.
"Oh, my wonderful son gave them to me as a gift."
There were $10,000 in the bank account after all, so it's only natural to spend it in such an obvious way. However, after knowing that Lisa was in need of money, in which Charles had lent her the money, I didn't really feel good about the fact that it was all spent on her luxurious products. As I sipped my tea without any smiles, my in-laws broke their smiling faces and said to me with a frightened look on their faces, as if they were threatening me,
"My son is such a nice, wonderful boy who gets gifts for me, but what about you?"
That's right. As his wife, are you serving my wonderful son well?
There's something fishy going on.
"I heard, He said that he gets blamed a lot from you for taking out the money to spend for me."
I completely understand now. Charles had told my parents-in-law as if he was the victim for doing something good, which would explain why they looked at me with fear. I gradually grew tired of my in-laws and my husband. I had never expected to be treated so horribly and neglected like this. And finally, I began to think about divorce. I thought that if I divorced him, I would eventually return to my parents' house and rebuild their home using the savings I had from the passive income. My parents' home is a 2-story house that was built before my brother was born, and it is over 30 years old. The family of 5 used to live there, but after my brother and I left home, it became empty. And even though a ramp and handrails to help my parents were partially installed into their house, it was too spacious and difficult for my parents, who are not very good with their legs. This would mean that a cozy 1-story house would be much better for them to live in. I immediately called my parents to tell them that I was thinking of getting a divorce and rebuilding their house. As to my surprise, my parents were not shocked about the divorce, and they were so happy to hear about the idea of rebuilding their home, and so I could tell more about it to them over the phone.
I'm glad that you're planning to rebuild it for us. Thank you.
Even if we won't be living there for long, it won't be a problem since you can take over the house as it was built with your income.
Well then, I'll start preparing and planning it bit by bit.
Take it easy. Just don't overdo it.
My dad and mom's words restored my depression immediately. Then, I started to rebuild my parents' house, and I was just waiting to hear from the construction company when Charles suddenly confronted me.
How dare you use our savings to build a house without telling me anything about it?
As soon as we sat down facing each other at the living room table, Charles started to bang his fist on the table while yelling at me. He continues to yell without regarding any of my feelings.
Well, my parents will live in the new house then.
No, that's impossible because it was built for my parents to live in.
You built it with our common property, so my parents have the right to live in it.
Are you planning to cram 4 people into that little 1-story house?
Shut the hell up. Just give me the house then.
Charles screams as he hits the table noisily. If I didn't tell him about the passive income I had, he would get even more heated when he found out. I decided to tell him the whole truth. To tell you the truth, I have passive income. I've actually been making savings from the real estate that was gifted to me by my grandparents. I pay for it from that passive income, so I didn't take a penny out from our common property. As I felt guilty for having broken a promise with my grandparents, Charles, who is in front of me, shook his shoulders with a wince and began pounding the table even harder.
What a bad wife you are, hiding the fact that you have an income. You play around with my money and protect your own like that by keeping it a secret.
Seeing his face turn red with his anger rising, I thought I understood why my grandparents told me to keep my passive income a secret. Just maybe, my grandparents had already figured out that Charles was that kind of person.
Listen, I'll take the house as alimony. Besides, the house you built as my wife is mine too. I am the head of the family, and if you disobey me, I will divorce you.
I felt nothing but dismay at my husband's insistence, and I was fed up with him. How could I have lived with such a man without knowing it? I had originally intended to use the passive income when we could no longer depend on Charles's income. I was hoping that if I was unable to work due to injury or illness, I could use them to help make ends meet. I was going to save it to maintain my life with Charles and let him know about it when the time came, but now I have no desire to spend that money on him anymore. Be my guest. I got up from my seat and left the house. I didn't want to be near Charles. I decided to stay at a business hotel for the day, cool off, and return the next day. However, when I returned home the next morning, Charles was waiting for me with a disgusting smile on his face. He approached me with a smirk on his face and held out a sheet of paper he was holding behind his back. It was divorce papers, and they were already filled out.
You're lying about your passive income, aren't you? You lied about having passive income because you wanted to get away with the fact that you were actually taking money out of our common property, didn't you?
My husband's argument is still the same, and I couldn't understand him at all. As my part, I sincerely told him the truth, and I didn't lie at all. It's the truth. I have passive income.
Here you go again. I know that you can't live without me.
Charles snickered and forced the divorce papers into my hand. And then he says,
You'll let me know when we can move in, okay? I'm gonna go out for a drink.
After saying that, he pat me on the shoulders and walked out humming in a good mood. Now I knew exactly who Charles was. He had not changed, and he had just hidden it from me that he had been looking down on me from the beginning of our marriage. He had never once given my feelings any real consideration. I immediately packed my belongings, filled out the divorce papers on the spot, and left home. I decided to move in with my parents for the time being and explain the situation to them, and we agreed to stay together until the house was finished. The next day, I was dismayed to see my cell phone's incoming call logs filled with Charles's number. Then, as if to follow up, I received a phone call from him. I pressed the call button and answered it, hoping that this would be the last conversation I would ever have with him. Hello?
Hey, all your stuff is gone, you know?
My husband's impatient tone left me with nothing but questions. He was the one who had confronted me with a divorce, so why was he panicking when all I did was just leave him? Huh? We are getting a divorce, so that's normal. I won't ever come back, so please use the empty spaces as you please. I wondered if he sensed something in the way I spoke to him. My husband was silent for a few minutes. Apparently, he now finally understood that I had passive income. Then, after a few moments of silence, he said in a very sweet voice I had never heard before,
Hey, can you let my parents live in the new house? I don't care if I have to live with your parents. Please.
I told you before already that it's a small one-story house.
Please. I said I'd surprise my parents with a house.
My husband's words left me speechless. What in the world was he thinking, giving them a house that he didn't even buy? And to announce it as a surprise was beyond reckless. You don't really care about the savings, do you? You have no idea how much I was worrying about the money I would give to you as an allowance, and the money I would save for the living expenses, and how much I was trying to make ends meet.
That has nothing to do with what's happening here.
You are just careless with money and leaves only the hassle to other people, and you present to your parents as if you prepared everything by yourself, right? When all of this has been prepared by me, for my parents.
That's...
My husband suddenly clammed up, and my frustration only grew. It's so shallow of him to make it seem as if he planned it all himself and give the house to his parents. In the end, he was just trying to take advantage of my pure feelings and take over my property. There's no reason for him to go so far as to trample on my feelings and intentions. I will not give you the house I built with all my heart and soul for my parents, for you, so that you can just show off to your parents. I rejected Charles's idea once and for all, and he began to rant extra loudly.
But husbands and wives are supposed to help each other. I'll tell them that you built it. Please.
We're not a married couple anymore, are we?
Huh?
I'm saying that we are strangers now since I already filed for divorce. On the very day my husband, or rather my ex-husband, handed me the divorce papers, I had submitted them to the city office. He had wanted a divorce so badly, and I felt sorry for him if I didn't leave him as soon as possible. I was already in the process of changing all the paperwork to what it was when I was still unmarried. My ex-husband said in a tone of disbelief.
You already filed it?
Why are you so surprised when you're the one who asked for the divorce?
I didn't think that you would really leave me. Hey, let's start over. Let's talk it out and try to be a good couple this time.
How can he say such a ridiculous thing now? This is a man who spent our savings on his own mother, threatened me for a divorce, and made fun of me to the very end. There is no way I would ever want to get back together with a person like him. No, thank you. Please give my regards to your parents. I said it brightly as I hung up his call. The next day, I continued to receive voicemails and messages from Charles demanding that we get back together. He told me that we could still start over, that he loved me, but I felt that he was only after my property and fortune. In order to completely cut ties with him, I immediately blocked all contact information related to him and his parents. In the meantime, the house was rebuilt, and my parents and I moved into our new house and are living comfortably. Later, I had a chance to meet with a mutual friend who also knew Charles, and I explained to her that Charles and I were divorced. My friend gave me some words of sympathy and told me what had happened to him and his family. First of all, my ex-husband suddenly submitted a letter of resignation at his workplace, saying that he no longer needed to work hard because he had acquired real estate, and no one at the company could get in touch with him. However, the next day, he apparently offered to withdraw his resignation letter. His bosses, of course, lectured him about how he suddenly disappeared without any prior notice, and what leaving only his resignation letter had caused, and that he didn't realize how much trouble he had caused the employees around him. The company had asked what was going on with him, but there was no way Charles could say that he was relying on his wife's income, so he tried to lie about his situation. However, in the end, the company easily found out the reason why he had a divorce with me. He could no longer make up any lies, and the company had refused him to be rehired. Charles, who had made fun of my passive income, saying it was probably a lie anyway, was trying to take advantage of my earnings. As well as showing off to his parents to give them a house as a present, he didn't think about me or our future whatsoever. When I think of that, I no longer have any feelings for my ex-husband. In fact, I feel refreshed. I heard that my ex-husband has returned to his parents' home, but his parents must have been very hard on him because he is now trying to find himself a new job. But he seems to be having a hard time finding a new job because of the reason why he left his last job. I can only say that he got what he deserved. As for me, I live with my parents in a house I built myself. I have a job I always wanted to do, and I am enjoying my life. I have been saving my passive income for Charles and our future, but now I will use it in the future to support those who have been supporting me. My husband, George, got my friend Rachel pregnant.
Oh, come on. What's with your face? It's your fault that you're infertile, you know. If you want alimony, I'll give it to you. Is $20,000 enough? Don't come after me because you get lonely, okay? Because that would be really annoying.
Sorry about that. Sorry I took George away from you. Anyways, we're going to be happy from now on. Make sure to congratulate us.
My friend Rachel patted her belly lovingly. Looking at her big belly, I put my hand on my chin. I thought to myself, something's wrong. And after thinking for a while, I said, oh, I see. That's how it is.
What is up with you all of a sudden?
I smiled to myself as I saw the truth behind her actions. My name is Diana. I live with my husband George in a rental apartment. I met George at my previous workplace. We were in different departments and joined the company at different times, but we met when we happened to sit next to each other at the company's year-end party. George had a gentle personality and was able to interact with everyone regardless of the department that they were in. I liked that about him, and he liked me, and so we began to go out. We had a few fights, but after 2 years of dating each other, we got married and have been married for 3 years. And currently, we have no children. It's not because we decided not to have children. Both George and I have a great desire to have children. We have talked about it throughout our relationship, and both George and I love children. I quit my job to become a housewife, but unfortunately, we have never been able to have a child. I was well aware that having a child is not something that can be achieved only by the desire to have one, but when I wasn't able to get pregnant after trying so hard to get pregnant, I felt that my spirit was slowly being sapped away. On top of that, Emily, who is my mother-in-law, lives nearby, visited me unannounced every day and kept pressuring me to have children. I thought she was a good mother-in-law when we first got married because she cared about many things, but she became more aggressive about me being pregnant as time went by. She was not only pressuring me to get pregnant, but she also took my things without permission, complained about the food I cooked, and was always picking on me. The other day, she took all my jewelry bags and clothes, claiming that she would help me clean up. Emily, those are my clothes. I'm still using them, so please don't take them without my permission.
What are you even saying? You don't even fulfill your duties as a wife, so aren't you ashamed of yourself buying all these luxurious things? I will use these accessories for you, so be thankful about that. Ugh, I really feel sorry for George. I really feel sorry for him for being tricked into the relationship by a woman like you. You can't get pregnant, so you're not fit in to be a wife. Just break up with George and get out of our lives.
No matter what I said, Emily would never listen to me. George, who was also there, did not stop Emily, but rather seemed to agree with her. It's not like I just sat idly by with my fingers crossed when they pressured me to get pregnant. I went to the OBGYN several times. After various tests, there was nothing wrong with my body. So, I thought that there might be something wrong with George's side, and I recommended that he undergo tests, but he wouldn't listen to me. On the contrary, he had completely accepted his mother's wisdom that infertility is a problem on the women's side, and the situation never got better. One day, after all this had happened, George came home from work with an unusually serious look on his face and asked me to sit down.
Diana, I've got to tell you something. Can you please listen to what I have to say?
What? Why are you being like this all of a sudden? I was going to make dinner, so does it have to be now? George stopped me as I was heading for the kitchen and sat me down on the sofa in the living room. He was sitting cross-legged on the carpet. Then, after about 10 seconds of silence, he opened his mouth.
Actually, she's pregnant. So please break up with me. If you want alimony, I'll give it to you. Is $20,000 enough? I'm sure you'd understand, Diana. I've always wanted a child. So like Mom said, I don't want a wife who can't get pregnant.
I didn't understand what was being said. All I could say was, "Huh? What?" And no other words came out. I was so stunned, and George began to repeat what he had said.
So, I will have a baby with someone else because you wouldn't get pregnant. Well, I feel bad that I made a baby with someone else, even when we haven't had a divorce yet. But that's just the way it is, so I'll pay you alimony. But you have to know that it's all your fault, you know, Diana. If only you had gotten pregnant, this wouldn't have ever happened.
I couldn't understand at all about the situation, no matter how many times I had been told. Is he really an adult? Where in the world has the gentle George who I fell in love with go? While holding my head because of the migraine I had from listening to him, I asked the one question which was bothering me the most. Who is the other girl? How long have you had that kind of relationship?
It's Rachel. You remember, she's your ex-coworker. When I told her you were having troubles to get pregnant, she suggested that she would.
George answered the question easily with a nonchalant look on his face. Rachel and I had joined the company at the same time, and we were reasonably close. She had even come to the wedding I had with George, and it was Rachel who gave me a push when I was wondering if I should go out with George in the first place. The worst kind of betrayal left me in darkness.
The OBGYN had checked her the other day, and they said that the baby is a boy. Oh, I'm so excited to have the baby. I want to play catch and go camping and stuff when he's older. Finally, my long-time dream is coming true.
George was being very happy despite my shock. Does your mother know about this? I asked him, and he nodded his head.
Of course, I already told her. Mom is so happy to finally have a grandchild. I'm getting ready to move in with Rachel too, and we're all getting prepared. As soon as you and I get divorced, we're gonna move in together.
It seemed that they were already talking on the premise that I would agree to the divorce. At that moment, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone to visit, but George says,
"Oh, she's here,"
and hurried to the front door. Then he quickly returned to the living room. To my surprise, Rachel was right behind George. Rachel was clinging onto his arm, smiling and laughing.
Sorry, Diana, for getting pregnant. George insisted on wanting to have a child so bad that I decided to support him. I heard from George, that you can't get pregnant, right? Well, that can't be helped. It's your fault for not being able to get pregnant, Diana.
Rachel was saying crazy things while patting her belly lovingly. Her belly looked very big. Are you sure that the baby in your belly is really the child of you and George? When I said that, Rachel's nostrils flared up and she says, "Of course," loudly.
Yes, of course. This child is mine and Rachel's. Don't be sarcastic just because you couldn't get pregnant. Right, Rachel?
Rachel, who had just assured me that it was their child, seemed to be looking at me with a somewhat worried look in her eyes.
Yes, that's right.
Of course it's mine and George's child.
I can't believe you even questioned me.
I see. Well, I thought to myself that if that's the case, I'll accept the divorce. With that, I hired a lawyer and decided to file for alimony against both of them. Thanks to the lawyer, I was able to get over $20,000 in alimony, and the divorce was finalized without any delay. I decided to move back to my parents' house because I didn't want to be near George and his family. I am sure that the truth will come out soon. A year had passed since then. I found a job soon after returning to my parents' home, and I was living in peace with my parents. I was at peace, remembering less and less of the horrible things that had happened to me. On that day, I went to work in the morning and came home around 7 p.m. and I saw someone hanging around in front of my house. Who could it be? I wondered, and as I approached, I saw that they had noticed me and immediately called out to me.
Oh, Diana, where were you? I was waiting for you all this time.
It was George and his mother who were wandering around and acting suspiciously. They had come here on their own without any prior notice, and they were acting like fools. What are you both doing here? We're not a married couple anymore, so we have no business with each other anymore. Saying this, I tried to squeeze my way between the two of them and enter the house, but I was blocked by being grabbed by my arm.
What's with your attitude? We've come out all the way here, so I'm never leaving until you listen to what I have to say.
Then, George started talking about what had happened after the divorce. There was a lot of complaining and other unrelated talks, but to summarize, it seems that he was deceived by Rachel. Rachel had been very supportive to George and Emily when she first moved in with them, by doing house chores and taking care of Emily, but after the birth of their child, she changed drastically. She left all the housework to Emily because she was physically exhausted, and she spent all day online shopping and only took care of the child when she felt like it. There were also concerns about the newborn child. The child did not resemble George at all. Unable to shake off her suspicions, Emily conducted a DNA test without telling Rachel and found that the child was not related to George. When George had questioned her, Rachel simply took the child and left the next night. I understand the situation, but what does that have to do with me? A woman who can't even get pregnant with a child is an unfit wife, right?
You still care about that? Don't be stubborn. Let's start over again. Mom is getting older, and she says it's hard for her to do the house chores every day, and I quit my job and do a part-time job, so our finances are tight. We're divorced, but we used to be a family, so let's help each other out here. Right?
Apparently, when we were getting divorced, I sent a letter to George's company of what had happened, which led to rumors about what was going on, and he ended up leaving the company. In other words, these two are trying to make me their ATM and a housekeeper. Seriously, how low can they get? When I was dumbfounded and remained silent, Emily, who took the advantage of the situation, opened her mouth.
If you're back at your parents' house, you haven't remarried yet, have you? Well, I'm not surprised at all. The only one who will marry a helpless woman like you is my kind son, George. Now hurry up and pack your bags and come with us.
From the way Emily spoke, it seemed that she was still treating me like an unfit wife. I could only think that she was taking advantage of me to have such an arrogant attitude when they were the ones who were in a position to ask for help. It's about time I put an end to this around here. I see, so that's what happened. Come to think of it, you haven't apologized to me at all yet. If you get down on your knees and apologize, I'll maybe consider getting back together with you. What do you say? Had they never thought that I would say something like this? George and Emily looked at each other in surprise. Then Emily shouted,
Why should I apologize to you?
but George stopped her. He probably decided that this time it was better to apologize honestly. George pulled onto Emily's arm, kneeled down on the ground, and bowed his head. Seeing this, Emily had also reluctantly got down on her knees.
I'm sorry. Please come back. Let's start over again.
I'm sorry for saying terrible things. All right, please look up, both of you. They both thought that I had agreed to get back together with George. George and Emily looked up with smiles on their faces.
Well then, let's get back together.
I crossed my arms deliberately and pretended to think about it. And then this is what I said. I've actually thought about it, but I still don't want to get back together with you. It's too bad that you both got down on your knees and apologized to the person who you looked down on. You two should just continue to live together in solitude. That's what you two deserve. George and Emily opened their mouths and looked very surprised. Then their faces turned bright red, probably from embarrassment and anger.
You! I can't believe you took advantage of us. That's enough.
You're the one who's done enough. No matter what you say, I have no intention of getting back together at all. As I said this, Emily looked frightened and stepped back. Then, somebody had come over. To my surprise, it was 2 police officers. Apparently, one of our neighbors saw me being harassed and called the police. George and Emily rushed to explain themselves, but in the end, they were taken away by the police. After that, they never came to my parents' house again. Rumor has it that Rachel's whereabouts were unknown, and since the divorce between them had not yet been finalized, the family's finances were collapsing due to George and Emily being forced to pay for purchases made with George's credit card by Rachel. So George and Emily had sold the house and are living on George's pay from his company, which has terrible working condition, and from Emily's pay from her part-time job. As a matter of fact, I knew where Rachel was and her current situation. A former co-worker of mine happened to see Rachel in town and told me about it. Supposedly, Rachel was carrying her son in a stroller with a large luggage. Her face was gaunt, and she didn't seem to have the same energy that she used to have. I don't care what happens to Rachel, but I just only hope that the child is healthy. And also, George had contacted me once. I had been told by my lawyer that I shouldn't block incoming calls just in case, so I had followed the lawyer's advice. At that time, I was checking my phone, so I answered his call.
Oh, Diana. Long time no talk. I actually wanted to tell you something, which is why I called you.
What? We have nothing to talk about anymore.
Actually, I went to the clinic the other day, and I finally found out that the reason why you weren't getting pregnant was because there was something wrong with me. I'm so sorry for believing in what my mom only had said to me instead of believing in you, Diana. I was so stupid. I'm truly sorry.
Even if you understand now, it's too late. Don't contact me again, ever. I said that and hung up on him. I hope that he will regret whatever he has done to me for the rest of his life. I felt as if everything was finally over. After that, I started to date my colleague at work. I told him I was divorced, but thankfully he said he didn't mind at all. We continued to date, and recently he proposed to me. Of course, I agreed to marry him, and he had to transfer, so I took the opportunity to move to a faraway town with him. This would really cut the ties I had with George and Emily. And now, I am pregnant with our long-awaited child. Just as my OBGYN had told me, there was nothing wrong with me. My husband was very happy and vowed to take care of me and the child for the rest of his life. I want to take good care of our child and my husband forever. My heart was filled with excitement as I thought of the happy life that awaited me with my child and my husband.